Okay, welcome Eric, welcome Jess. We'll just wait for some more people to pop on and then we will start. Okay. Okay, welcome Annika. Annika is a regular and we always appreciate the support. So we're just waiting for some more people to pop on. Well, yeah. So you guys can get some snacks along if you want or something to drink while we wait. Yeah, the people are playing hard to get today. That's right, Annika. Okay, we'll give people another minute or two and then we'll start. I'm sure people will join as we go along. Okay, I think let's start because otherwise we're going to wait too long. People will join, I'm sure, as they see that we are live. Okay, so good afternoon everybody and welcome to the Cape Town Museum's Instagram chats. My name is Chanel Fredericks and I'm so happy that you guys have decided to join us or even watch this video. Today we have a very special guest. He goes by Professor Eric Atmore, but to some of us who are close friends, who are like this with him, we can get to call him Eric, okay? So Eric Atmore is the director of the Center for Early Childhood Development. Some people know him as, or call him the godfather of ECD. Some of us refer to him as being a yuppie, because he's quite a cool guy. He hangs out in spots like Vida and Need. Although I must say this, that just recently, I think about 2 years ago, he decided to give up his, what we call a blockier, and he now has a smartphone. So we're very proud of him, and he's earned his yuppie status. But I think the roles that he enjoys most is being a father and grandfather. He always speaks so lovingly about his kids and his grandchildren. So we're happy to speak to Eric today. He's been in the ECD sector for a long time. He is my boss, but he says, don't call me me your boss. We are colleagues, okay? So boss/colleague. So yeah, I am going to welcome in Professor Eric Atmore, and I'm going to ask you guys, those of you who are watching, to give those virtual round of applause. Okay, let's see. Okay, welcome Eric.
Good afternoon, Chanel, and thank you for that totally incorrect introduction.
What was wrong about it, Eric? Please, I only speak the truth.
I can't tell you, but a lot of it was, it was very nice to hear, and thank you very much. And you know, you are special, and everyone I work with, all these young people full of energy,
good-looking young people,
innovation, all these young people, yeah, even you.
Yeah, okay, Eric, I'm so happy to have you here today. I mean, it's by time that you are on here with us and gracing us with your presence. I'm telling you now, guys, whenever you're in the presence of Professor Eric Atmore, you will leave having learned something new. You would definitely have a good laugh. And if you have a meeting with Eric, he will always give you food. And he told me when I started there, he said, Chanel, weigh yourself now and then weigh yourself in a year's time. Is that not right, Eric?
That's 100% right. The only person never to have put on weight is Lauren van Niekerk. And now we've got another Lauren as an intern. But I think food is very important. You know, in Africa and in South Africa, food brings us together. If you think of Sunday afternoons, Friday evenings, and it's a wonderful way to meet people and to communicate.
Yeah. I should read some of the comments, Eric. Daniel Richard says, hey, Eric and Chanel. Hi, Daniel. And Bridget is outing you and saying that you like fish and chips. She's outing you, Eric. And Jess is saying quiche.
Chanel, you cannot live in Cape Town and not like fish and chips, particularly snook and chips. It's a staple. It's as indigenous to Cape Town as Table Mountain is.
Yes. No, true that, Eric. So Eric, let's get into the questions. And I thought we could start off by talking a little bit about your childhood. And I know you've had a really interesting childhood. You've told us that you grew up in Woodstock, and you used to like take some field trips to the Woodstock caves and so forth. So can you tell us a little bit about what your childhood was like?
Okay, I was born many decades ago. Let me tell you, in the 50s, 1955, and to two parents who, in retrospect, and when I look back, were fantastic. You know, I still believe, and before I make decisions or say things, I often ask myself, what would my mother say? Or would she be proud of what I'm about to do? And that'll guide decision making. But we grew up in Woodstock, and as you know, Woodstock was the one community in South Africa that the apartheid government could not desegregate. So we had Black African neighbors, we had what was then called colored neighbors, we had people from a variety of backgrounds. My growing up, you know, the 50s and the 60s, our parents came out of the Great Depression, 1929 Depression. They came through World War II, so they were hardy and they were tough. And they tried to reproduce this on their children. So there was never lots of cash around, but the house was always filled with love and care and respect and autonomy. So yes, we got up to lots of naughty things, and I tell my grandchildren all the naughty things I did, and I warn them never to repeat it. I was in Woodstock police station many times for breaking windows, for mocking older people, and for doing all sorts of things. So a childhood where there was no motor car, there was no hot water in the house, there was no fridge, there was no television in South Africa at that point, there was no telephone. But the one thing both my parents insisted on is that you read, and then you read, and then you read, and then you read some more. Because my mother went as far as Standard 6, and she worked as a sales person behind the till at CNA. And my father was far more educated. He went as far as Standard 8. And he was a compositor. And in 1975, when we had the computer revolution, at age 47, he was retrenched, never to work another day in his life. The computer industry took over from what is called hot metal printing. So I can't be grateful enough. And I've tried to replicate that with my own children and now with my grandchildren.
Mm-hmm. Eric, thanks for sharing that with us. I'm so glad that you mentioned the job that your father did, because when you told us that story, I thought it was so interesting, because you said you would literally do, can you just explain exactly what your father did, what his job
Well,
entailed?
today one makes a newspaper via a computer. And as you know, newspapers will be gone in a few years. But the way a page on a newspaper was made is that one person would set out all the print and the font on a page. But because of the way the rollers ran and the way you had to ink the metal, and I'm sure you've seen these printer's trays which children put their little things on. Because of the way the reels ran, the words had to be laid out back to front and upside down. So imagine the word Chanel. You would not spell it Chanel. You would spell it Lenahc, and you would set it out upside down as well, so that when the ink was put on the page and when the rollers ran the newspapers, it came out the way that we read a newspaper today. And in 1975, with computers, whereas before you needed one person per page, then one person could do 10 pages because of technology. And as a result, at age 47, he was unemployable. And that brought about its own struggle, but being tough, having come through the Depression and having come through World War II, we got on with it. And I'm forever grateful for some of the life lessons learned from both parents.
Fascinating stuff, Eric. So now, Eric, tell us a bit about how you entered into the ECD sector. So I know your background, you were a social worker, you studied at UCT. Tell us a bit about how you then entered into the ECD sector.
I first started off doing a BCom. And because I was more interested in sport at UCT, I remember missing one mathematics exam because I had a soccer practice at the same time, and the mathematics exam took second place. I failed my first year and I was kicked out of university. And I was standing on a street corner in Woodstock when a friend of mine came past, and I told him I wasn't going back to university. University wasn't my thing. And I'll never forget the words that he used. He said to me, "I will kick your backside so hard if you don't go back to university." I went back, spoke to the dean of the social sciences faculty, and they accepted me. And then 3 years later, ended up with a social work degree, which I've never practiced, by the way, not one day. Then I did an honors degree and started work full-time during my honors year. And my first job was as a youth and childcare worker in Bishop Lavis, Elsie's River, in 1979, 1980, at the heart of the apartheid era. And, you know, in Cape Town in 1980, there were huge outbreaks of protest, and stayed there for 4 years. And one of the projects we ran was an early childhood development center. It was not called that at the time. It was called a creche. I then got a position as director of the Buxton Childcare Center, and then went on to Grassroots Educate Trust a few years later. And then in 1994, founded the Center for Early Childhood Development with two of my colleagues, Ros Witboy and Daniel Plaatjes. So that's been the trajectory.
Okay. And then, Eric, we must shed some light on the Cape Town Museum of Childhood, an exciting project that was your brainchild. Tell us a bit about also, how did the Cape Town Museum of Childhood come about?
I went to London a few times in the 1990s, and I came across this wonderful resource called the Children's Museum in London. Went to visit it. Beautiful, all the resources, everything that you would want. However, it didn't have the African vibrancy, you know, the color and the noise. I then went to the Shakespeare Globe, which is on the banks of the Thames. Looked around there and put one and one together and got 100. why could we not replicate this in Cape Town and make it more vibrant, more exciting, more noisy, more touching? Because museums at that point were all look and don't touch. Came back, wrote to the provincial minister of education, who at the time happened to be Helen Ziller. She didn't, showed no interest, but she passed me on to the department. Went to them, and I still have the letter, and they showed no interest at all. And then a few years later, when the lottery put out a call for innovative proposals, we put in a bid, and they gave us some money to start the museum. So that's the background to it.
Thanks, Eric. Let's move a bit back to the ECD sector. So we know that we are living through a COVID-19 pandemic. It has hit our economy really hard. It has hit our people really hard, but it's also hit the ECD sector really badly. Can you tell us a bit about what this pandemic, the impact that this pandemic has had on the ECD sector?
The impact has been substantial, and it's been at different levels. You know, the first level is at children, and that's clearly the most important one. Across the country, about 2.5 million children are or were under levels 5 and 4, were missing their opportunity for early learning. You know, the daily attendance at an ECD center where they did all sorts of activities and where they were blossoming. So that opportunity was removed. The second level has been at a level of nutrition. For the overwhelming majority of young children, they get their main nutritious meal at the ECD center each day. And with ECD centers being forced to close, which, by the way, was the correct decision for level 5 and for level 4. With ECD centers being closed, those children didn't get that meal. And then we look at it from a community level. If you're not in an ECD center, you are wandering around in communities which are dangerous. And we know there's danger out there. We've seen in Cape Town how a 2-year-old got murdered during level 4. So children were out in communities and at risk. And then the fourth element is that parents who under lockdown level 3 were able to go back to work couldn't, because the ECD centers were closed. So imagine a woman who's a cashier at Pick n Pay and has got 2 small children. She couldn't go back to work, meaning that she couldn't earn an income, and those children suffered. So there was this court case, and we played a minor role in it as expert evidence, which I provided to the legal team, and ECD centers were then allowed to open. So the impact has been significant. Another element that we mustn't forget is that those ECD teachers who are already poorly paid, and if we're honest about it, they are abused in the hours they work and the poor salaries that they get. They weren't paid either. So all in all, it was certainly a difficult situation. I can understand it for level 5 and level 4, when we had to stop the spreading of this virus. I think the country did it very, very well at level 5 and level 4. But then when we moved to level 3 and beauticians could go back to work, the taxis were riding, sport started, the practice of sport. To not have included ECD, I think, was a strategic mistake, which came from the national minister.
Okay, Eric, so like you mentioned, the High Court has ruled that ECD centers can open, but now they are faced with another barrier, and that's they need to have the necessary PPE in order to open and operate safely for themselves as teachers, principals, but also the children. So can you tell us a little bit about CCD's PPE for ECD campaign?
The Center for Early Childhood Development has been involved at 2 levels, in fact 3 levels. The first is that immediately that the lockdown was in place, some of my younger colleagues, and I must pay credit to, particularly to Gloria, started a feeding scheme in Red Hill. That then spread to Kaltfontein, it spread to Mariesburg, it spread to Philippi, and it spread to Die Bosch, which is here in Weinberg. And we managed to raise a substantial amount of money to keep those going, and they're still going. That was the first response. But then when the High Court decision was made, we realized that even though centers could legally open, in practice they couldn't, because they needed the PPE in order to safeguard young children. And that was the primary concern, that ECD centers should only be taking children when it is safe and virtually risk-free to do so. So again, another younger colleague of mine, in this case, Bridget Cards, and I think you were involved, started a campaign, a Snapscan campaign to raise money in order to buy PPE. And what's been significant is that subsequent to that, a number of organizations have copied it. I don't know if you've noticed that. So there are all these campaigns going around. Basically, if you can contribute either cash or kind products, you go on to hashtag PPE for FOUR ECD, and you contribute. And it's taken slowly, but there's so many competing or collaborating non-profits doing the same thing that we don't see that as a negative. You know, the more of us who can collect PPE and distribute them, the better.
Yeah.
What your viewers need to understand also is that Tito Mboweni, in his budget adjustment speech, allocated 65 million rand to 7,000 ECD centers for PPE. Now, that was not 65 million rand of new money. He took that money from the ECD infrastructure budget and he transferred it. But the weakness of that is, while we're grateful for 65 million, we actually needed about 2 billion to get operational. And when the department talks about 7,000 ECD centers, they mean registered centers. And you and I know that the most vulnerable centers, and where children are the most vulnerable, is in the unregistered centers. And unfortunately, the department is using COVID-19 to weed out the unregistered centers. That's coming through clearly, and it comes through in the minister's response to the High Court judgment. So the campaign is there. It peaks on Saturday with the Mandela Day, and there's a drive past which you are involved in, and I hope that goes well.
Yes, just to latch on what Eric has said, for Mandela Day, we've kind of incorporated our campaign into a Mandela Day initiative. We'll be in front of the CECD building, which is 20 Rosemead Avenue in Claremont. We'll be standing there. You'll see we'll have balloons, we'll have big posters and so forth. And so what we're encouraging people to do is come pop around to the center. We'll be in front on sort of the pavement, and we're doing a SnapScan drive-by. So you'll come, you don't have to even have to get out of your car. We'll be standing with our SnapScan barcode, and you'll just lift your smartphone. Don't come with your block here, guys. Get your smartphones, and then you'll snap and make your donation. But we also are welcoming any other goods like masks, sanitizers, and so forth. The list of goods you can find on our website or on CCD's Facebook page. So if you have time, if you can make it, come around. We might also give you a little lollipop to say thank you. And it's between 10 and 12 on Saturday. And I already see Daniel Richards said he's going to be there, and we're looking forward to that. We're looking forward to seeing you, Daniel Richards. And when you do come to the drive-by, we are the selfie generation, people. So take your selfie and then use our hashtag PPE for ECD. So we're looking forward to seeing you guys there. Okay, Eric, my last few questions to you. What has the greatest lesson, or for you, what has been one of the greatest lessons that you have learned from working in the ECD sector?
Oh, Chanel, that's a tough one. But I think the greatest lesson is, and I differ from a lot of people on this. People talk about the children are our future. I don't believe that. The children are the present, right? Children are suffering at the moment. They're being abused, neglected, and many, many years ago, a professor at Pretoria University said to me, he thinks there's an anti-child sentiment in the world. And if you look at what we do to children in America, if you're a black child, you are far more likely to be arrested simply for wearing a hoodie. In Syria, in parts of Africa, in Europe, in America, children are incarcerated simply because they are Hispanic or they are Muslim. And I think the biggest lesson is that the children are now, and you know, the late Oliver Tambo said something wonderful. He said, a nation or a country that does not value its children does not deserve its future. And I think that's a life lesson which I hope politicians around the world, not only our politicians, but politicians all over the world, take to heart. If we follow the lead of the New Zealand Prime Minister, who happens to be a 37-year-old woman who breastfeeds her child in Parliament, she's showing the way. And I just hope that our politicians in this country and politicians around the world can duplicate what she does.
Yeah. Our politicians are more, they taking Parliament time for sleep time, nap time. So yeah. Eric, so CCD, I think this year we're going to be around for 26 years. Last year we had a lovely 25th birthday. We had a lovely celebration. Eric was dancing. He was showing us his dance moves, which were not too bad, people. But yeah. What has been your proudest moment in this 26 years that CCD has been around?
Chanel, there's not one particular moment. I think that, yes, we've won lots of awards. We got the President's Award for the top ECD project in the country. We got the African ICT Award, etc., etc., etc. Now, those are awards. But the proudest moment is seeing young people of all walks and all persuasions and all backgrounds making a difference in people's lives. And here I include you. I include the 3 in your office. I include the young interns at the back who are 21. And I think the country's in good hands. You know, our generation and generations before us messed the country up. We can't deny that. But I think the country's in good hands when I look at Jessica Blom, when I look at Chanel Fredericks, when I look at Bridget Karts, when I look at Navan, Lauren, Nelisa, Tembisa Nkola, when I look at Boniswa, these people, it makes me immensely proud. And you mentioned earlier the Godfather. Not really a godfather, but a father. And the role I hope to play is to support young people. One of you has to become the Minister of Education. One of you has to become the president. Then I will be very, very happy. But I really can't express enough that our young people across the board are brilliant. I mean, Daniel Richards is on this on this video. Do you know that that crazy guy is distributing 1 million oranges to ECD centers and other communities? My generation would never have taken that on. We would have stopped at 10. because we had come through the war. It was austerity, and we were constrained. Young people today have no constraints. They do it quick, and they do it competently. So people like Daniel and yourself are changing this world, believe it or not.
Thank you for that, Eric. I just want to say, Daniel Richards, guys, if you want to learn a bit more about his initiative, it's called Project Orange. Head over to his page. I think they have a page of their own as well. They're doing fantastic work. And that's also another worthy cause that you can donate towards. So Eric, like you mentioned, like I mentioned, people refer to you as the godfather of the ECD sector. When it's the craziest thing, guys, when sometimes we go to these, maybe we go to a march or some sort of gathering where people of the sector gather, and Eric walks in and people are like, he's like a celebrity. People are just ready. They just want to be like, Prof, do you have something to say? They regard you very highly. The people have a lot of respect for you in the sector, Eric. But now I want to know, who are some of the people, and this is besides the young crowd, some of us young people, who are some people that inspire you?
Chanel, it's a mix. I think top of the list has to be former President Nelson Mandela. I mean, there's not a book written about him that I don't have. And there's not a book written about him that I haven't forced my children to read. I think he was exemplary. And we had the great privilege in 2004 of meeting him in his house in Houghton. So he's clearly one. Archbishop Desmond Tutu is a paragon of virtue. He would deny it, but really he's somebody that we look up to, and has played a huge role. And I've had the privilege of meeting him as well. The third person you may not, or you will know of him, but you may not expect this answer, is Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali said, "Why must I go and fight in Vietnam? The Viet Cong don't call me nigger." And there's a message. This man, at the height of his physical ability, world boxing champion, spent 3 years in jail for his beliefs. And again, I had the privilege of meeting him in Cape Town in the early 1990s. Then in the academic world, Professor Mandela Shabalala, who was my master's thesis supervisor, he was a hardcore Pan-African Congress supporter. And you know, remember, the PAC was this party that we were all warned against. He was the gentlest, nicest man you could wish. And then in more recent times, Professor Nuran Davids, who supervised my doctoral thesis. Here's a woman, tall in stature, or whatever the word is, but really one of the sharpest and brightest minds that I know. And somebody who speaks truth to power, somebody who's not scared to say her say. And then at the other end of the spectrum, my 3 grandchildren, who've taught me more in the last 5-6 years than any book has ever taught me. So it's people. But then every day I learn from yourself, Jessica, Sarah, Tembisa, Oniswa, Zara, Rukia, Roz. I think we learn so much from our colleagues and from our friends. And often we don't know that we're learning, but we learn things.
Yeah. Eric, 2 things, and you brought this up now because you spoke about Muhammad Ali, so this is your fault that we're going to talk about this. But Sarah, or somebody showed us a book that referenced you in it, and I think it was something to do with when you were a boxer. Tell us a bit about your boxing days. And I think the book was linked to, or maybe it wasn't, but I'm sure you did do some boxing back in the day. Guys, Eric was super talented. I think he did every sport that he possibly was. Eric did.
Chanel, a journalist by the name of Gavin Evans wrote a book called Dancing Shoes is Dead. Dancing Shoes was an East London boxer, a black African boxer, who went on to do very, very, very well. And at university, I boxed for UCT and ended up being the Western Province heavyweight champion and also the South African Universities heavyweight champion. It was accidental. It was accidental that I took it up. I was a pretty good soccer player, but I got injured and was in plaster of Paris for nine months. And in order to get fit after the plaster of Paris came off, I took up boxing. And then when he wrote this book, Dancing Shoes Is Dead, for some reason he included 2 pages about me and an incident on the UCD campus in 1979 when the Inkatha Impi came onto the campus and everybody ran away and I stood firm. And for some reason the Impi turned around and went away. And Gavin Evans wrote about this in his book. So, you know, boxing is a wonderful sport in that it teaches you a lot. And, yeah, that story, but that's actually classified information and you shouldn't be exposing it or exposing me to the world, please.
I just want to tell people, don't think that Eric is good on his feet, so don't mess with him. You never know when a little, what is his right little... I don't know what the boxing terminology is, but might come your way. You never know.
It's called a left hook. It's called a left hook.
There we go. There we go. And then secondly, Eric, your supervisor, Nuran Davids, and I think you quoted her in your first page on your thesis. You said there was a phrase that she used because sometimes you were, you needed a bit of fire at times with your thesis and getting it done. So what was that famous line, especially for those who might be considering doing a doctorate or those who are sitting with a proposal and they're not taking that next step? What is that famous line that Professor Nuran Davids used?
Chanel, I must say, it took me 4 years to write a doctorate, but I had 2 full-time jobs. And there were times when I was very productive, really churning out 1,000, 2,000 words a day. But there were times when I sort of hid away and did nothing for 3-4 months. And one day I went to Nuran to a supervision session in her office. And she cottoned on that I'd been doing nothing for 3 months. And she turned around and said to me, I think it's 5 or 6 wonderful words. She said, Eric, get the damn thing done, right? Get the damn thing done. 5 words. And I was a bit taken aback, a bit surprised. Went home, got a sheet of paper, and in thick black Koki, I wrote, get the damn thing done, and stuck it up on the wall. And that really was a kick in the pants, and I'm forever grateful to Nuran for saying those words. On a lighter note, you know, in the thesis, when I gave her a copy, Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you want to be. And Nelson Mandela said, never, never, never again will we have white domination or black domination. And I wrote there, and Nuran David said, get the damn thing done. So, and now it's payback time for me to get at you. You are about to start the doctorate. Agreed? Get the damn thing done.
Okay, Eric, I'm going to write it down. After this interview, I'll write that on a page. Eric Atmore.
And please pass it on to the 3 colleagues of your in your
Jessica
office.
Blom.
Yes.
Yes, they are watching, Eric. Jessica, Bridget, Sarah,
and Sarah.
get the damn thing done.
Yep.
Okay, Eric, I'm done with the questions, but you know we always end up with a fun game. So I'm going to read out a statement, and you just say the very first thing that comes to your mind. Okay? Your favorite childhood book was?
Chanel, my childhood is many decades ago. I don't remember any books, but I remember reading 2 newspapers every single day. We were forced, because my father was in the printing industry, he brought home the newspaper every day. And we were forced to to read the newspaper.
Okay. Besides fish and chips, because I'm sure you like it back in the day as well, but your favorite childhood food? And then also add that the famous line that your mom used to also say that you're always telling us about in the staff room when we're having lunch.
I think my favorite food was probably bangers and mash. And my mother's saying was, there are millions of children around the world starving. Eat your food. So we were never allowed to leave anything on the plate, because around the world there were millions of children starving. Sadly, 60 years later, that's still the case. There are millions of children around the world starving.
Okay, Eric, your favorite holiday as a child?
The only one I recall is getting on a train with my mother and going to Bloemfontein at the age of 7. And I've still got the photographs to show it, black and white photographs. I think that's the only holiday that I could recall, because as I keep saying to you, it's decades ago. We won't count the decades, but it's decades ago. And it was, I think that was my first trip out of Cape Town to Bloemfontein that would have been in 1962 on a train.
Wow. Okay, what an adventure. Your favorite childhood teacher, if you can remember any of your teachers back in the day?
There are 2 teachers who showed confidence in me. Most of the teachers wrote me off. Remember, I failed standard 6. I got my science mark was 20%. In mock matric, my maths mark was 8%. But there were 2 teachers who backed me. The one was the English teacher, Mr. Thorpe, and the other was the accountancy teacher, Mr. Flock, because I was a good cricketer and he coached the cricket team. And it's funny how the influence of these teachers carried over. I had no idea of going to university until matric. And as I said, my mock matric mark for mathematics was 8%. I should never have got into university. In today's competitive, equal environment, I wouldn't have got in, but I got in because I had a white skin, and one has to acknowledge that. That was the protocol at the time. But those 2 teachers, I'm forever grateful for their backing.
And which schools, Eric, were they teaching at, or were you at?
I was at Mountain Road Primary in Woodstock and at Cape Town High School.
Okay. Does Mountain Road still exist? I know Cape Town High still exists, but Mountain Road?
Mountain Road still exists. It still exists.
Okay.
It's totally multiracial. And in fact, Cape Town High, in my matric year, the whole school, there wasn't a single child who wasn't white. It was against the law. Today, Cape Town High is a South African school.
Okay, Eric, last one. If you could sum your childhood up in one word, what would that word be?
Happy. Happy childhood, made happy by 2 wonderful parents who were strict. My mother is half my size, but I was dead scared of her. I was more scared of her than of Muhammad Ali.
Okay. Eric, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for, Eric is a very busy man, guys, but thank you so much for taking time to just share your childhood, share your passion, which is ECD, and just also talk a bit about what's going on in the sector. And yeah, we just thank you again. Thank you for those who have joined us. We always appreciate those who take the time. I know data is a real struggle, but we appreciate that. And yeah, Eric, any last words from your side before we say goodbye?
Yes, I'm disappointed you didn't ask me to sing my favorite song.
No, oh, that was on my list, but I thought I would save the people because people told me that your singing abilities are. But okay, your favorite song, Eric, your favorite childhood singer or band?
Frank Sinatra, and the song is My Way. You know the one? I Did It My Way.
Okay. Do you want to? Okay, Eric, I'm gonna be nice. Yes, I'm going to be nice. Would you like to sing a line from that song? Just remember, this will forever be on the internet.
Okay. There's one line that goes, I faced it all and I stood tall and did it my way. I think that's important that we do. I think it's important that we do things our way. Chanel, on a serious note, I think it's important we do things our way. There's so much innovation and creativity in people in general and in young people that we must encourage people to explore and to make mistakes because that's how we improve the world.
Yeah. Eric, I'm so sorry that I doubted your singing abilities, because you can actually keep a note. And then also, thank you. I think lots of older people or other people can take a chapter out of your book, where you're always encouraging young people. You're always pushing us to do things, getting the damn things done. So thank you for being that positive influence and driving force in our lives. I know you always say you love being around young people because they bring a great sense of energy to the room. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for being willing to invest in us and our future. So thank you so much, Eric.
Thank
It's
you.
a
And
privilege and an honor to be part of ECD and to know you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, guys. I mean, this is crazy. Please do share this, make this go viral. Eric Atmore sang on this this video, so yeah, you can book him for weddings and bar mitzvahs and all of those things. I'll be the manager. Just contact me. I'll give you a nice lockdown fee. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. Have a lovely Thursday. Goodbye.